this interview of Milton A Hendrickson for the Valley Stream Historical Society for their oral history project. It is taking place on Monday, October 24th, 1988. It is being held at Mr. Hendrickson's office at Hendrickson Brothers, 63 North Central Avenue, Valley Stream. And the interviewer is Adele Hagman of the Valley Stream Historical Society. Mr. Hendrickson, I understand that your family has been in Valley Stream for a long time. They must have been one of the first families around here.
One of the first, yes. The original Hendricksons in Valley Stream came into the property on the easterly side of our present yard here in 63 North Central Avenue in 1825.
What were their names?
I believe there was Seymour and Lillian Hendrickson, and there were 13 children. They settled in a one-room shack and started farming here.
How do you know how far their farm extended? What was the extent of it?
It was, let's see, what's this, Kent Road?
Kent Road, yeah.
From the 5 acres which are here now and going out to the area approximately of Kent Road to the brook on the easterly side of the property.
Oh, I see. So it was a good number of acres, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
And did all the children settle around here as far as you know?
Most of them stayed within the area.
Then that was your great-great-grandfather.
Right.
And
my great, I guess 3 times.
Oh, really?
Great.
All right, let's trace it down. So they've been in this area for 1825, and they maintained a farm here until when?
Well, my father was still farming here up until the start of Hendrickson Brothers, which was in 1922.
Now, your grandfather, he was one of several children also.
Right.
His name?
His name was John C. Hendrickson, and he lived here, he farmed here, and then he became the overseer of the town, we used to call it Poor Farm, which is presently the A. Holly Patterson home.
Oh, I see.
My grandfather was the
director?
let's see.
Well, he had something to do with the managing of it anyway.
He was the resident manager of the town of Hempstead, as we call it in those days, Poor Farm, and my grandmother was the matron there. They lived right on the site for many years, up until his retirement. After he retired, he came back and lived here at the house which is on the other side.
In other words, he retired from farming to go there, huh?
Yeah, he left farming, my father and 2 uncles had parts of it. And then he went to the town of Hempstead farm as the manager until his retirement.
Yeah, well, I know we're going back quite a ways.
Yeah.
Now, you said your father and your uncles ran the farm. Who were your uncles?
My Uncle Frank, my father actually ran the farm. My Uncle Frank and Uncle Freeman, together with my father, formed the Hendrickson Brothers and incorporated in 1922. And Uncle Frank had his own private trucking business, which became part of the Hendrickson Brothers. And Uncle Freeman had just returned from naval service when the company was formed. Actually, my father had run the
But your father did start some sort of a contracting business or a haulage business.
Well,
Your
my
grandfather.
my grandfather had actually done work of maintaining town roads, and my father had worked with him on that.
And that's where the Hendrickson brothers grew out of those combined businesses then.
Yes.
Mhm.
They did.
And each of the brothers took a post in the
Yes,
business.
Once the construction business was started, each one had a full active part of the operation and running of the company.
All right. Well, then now we come down to the present generation. You and your brother John were in the business.
No, my cousin John.
Oh, cousin. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Yeah,
Yes.
that's right. Each brother had one son.
Each brother had one son. Frank Hendrickson, Frank Jr., left the company approximately 15 years ago and now lives in Maine. My cousin John is a secretary of the company. He has two sons who are working here at the company. One is actually, Tom is actually at the Race on Asphalt company, and John Freeman is with Hendrickson Brothers.
Now you've lived in Valley Stream all your life then.
Well, I did up until 1961,
Oh.
and I built a home in Lawrence, and I have lived there since then.
Oh, I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah. I was born, in fact, I was born right here on East Avenue, about 2 blocks up from this office.
Is the house
And-
still there?
Oh, yes,
Mhm.
yes. I came down here to live when I was 2 years old. And I had a home in Valley Stream, which was built in 1940 on Edgewood Road, and we lived there until we moved to Lawrence.
And your wife's name, maiden name?
My wife's name was Edith Hanson. She was a Valley Stream girl. She lived down on Edgewood Road, and not Edgewood Road. Oh, gosh.
Well, in this area too.
Yes, in the old Gibson area of Valley Stream.
Oh, I see. Yeah. And was she born in Valley Stream?
Well, she was born in Long Island City, but came here at a very early age, I think 2 or 3 years old. One of the first of the Gibson homes.
Did you know her as a child when you were children?
Well, I knew her from last year in high school.
I see. You discovered each other, huh?
Yeah.
Now, let's talk a little bit about your father, Arthur.
Arthur Hendrickson.
He became very well known all over the state. Was he
Well,
political?
Yes, he was politically oriented. He was the Republican leader of the village. He was a national committeeman. He was the mayor of Valley Stream for, I think it was 3 terms, unopposed at election time. He remained active in politics up until a few years before his death. He died in 1982, and he was just a couple months short of his 90th birthday.
Oh, I see. So he had a full active life, huh?
Yes, he did.
Did he live in Valley Stream right up until his
Yes,
death?
he did.
And when you were a boy, you graduated from Central, I assume.
Yes, I graduated from Central High.
Do you remember any of the teachers or people back then?
Oh,
Or coaches?
yes, the athletic coach was George Kennedy. Miss Marceau was an English teacher. Miss Henry, a mathematics teacher that I had.
And the principal was?
The principal was Harry Gross, and the assistant principal was Stewart. I can't think of his first name. He has I always remember him. I believe he had lost a part of his arm in a war. He always had one hand he had a glove on because it was an artificial.
Oh, is that right? I hadn't heard that before.
Yeah, yeah. And he could get you around the neck with that arm too if he caught you doing something he didn't like.
Did you get involved in sports at all, or were you too busy working?
No, I was on the wrestling team, and I was on the what we call the second football team. I wasn't really big enough to be the first string. I was on
Yeah, second string, I
the
guess.
second string team.
Yeah. And do you remember any particular occasions while you were in high school there? Any particular dances or holidays or catastrophes?
Oh, not particularly, no.
No. And before that, you went to Wheeler Avenue School?
I went to, my first school was at Wheeler Avenue, and then the third grade,
Wheeler Avenue School?
I went to, my first school was at Wheeler Avenue, and then the third grade, school 24 opened. 30, District 30 opened.
Yes,
up
that
on
was the
Clear
last
Stream
one to
Avenue.
open, yeah.
As a matter of fact, they put a temporary building right in back of a 4-room temporary school building right in back of the parking garage. And we went there while they were constructing the new District 30 school on Clear Stream Avenue.
I see. Well, where were you living at that time? In this
Right here.
area? And you still went to District 30 school, huh?
Well, this became part of District 30.
It did.
It was 13
Yeah,
before District 30 was formed.
right. Mm. I didn't realize it came up this far. I
Yeah.
mean, District 30.
Yeah.
Mm. And so you really graduated or was promoted
Well,
from
I
there,
went,
huh?
actually I went,
Time.
yeah, I moved up state with my mother and 2 sisters in a small town called Walker Valley, and then moved to Harriman, New York, and I graduated from grammar school there. We came back to Valley Stream, and I had my last 3 years at Central High and did graduate in class 1933.
Mm-hmm. Now, when was this building built on the site of the farm? Was that
This
it?
building where we're sitting right now was originally a house that belonged to my father's uncle, Uncle Sid. It was purchased by the Hendrickson brothers and was converted to an office. Immediately on the south side, this office is in 2 wings, like there was actually a space going up in the back, was my father's house. And the new part of the office was built back in the late 30s.
Mm-hmm.
It was before the war. No, it wasn't until after the war that the
new
old
wing?
home was torn down, and
I see.
my father's home
But
was torn
you
down.
used it as an office before that, before it was torn down? The
No,
house? This was the
side
office.
was the office.
I see.
And then I should remember those dates. But
No, it doesn't have to be
Yeah.
exact. Just
But
give
it
us
was,
a approximate.
I'm sure it was right after the war that
Mhm.
my father built a home up on in Valley Stream, another home, and moved there, and the house was torn down, and a new office was built.
Had they sold off the farmland by that time?
And most of it is incorporated in our present working shop and yard.
Oh, it is.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
There's a little over 5 acres here.
I see. When you graduated, when you were in high school, were you working in the business at that time?
In the summer,
Mm-hmm.
I was a chainman on the surveying crew.
That sounds like hard work.
Also, I used to, we had, back in the early days, Hendrickson Brothers had 9 teams of horses, which were used in excavation and grading work. And we also had some riding horses, and we, for a time, ran a small riding academy, and I used to give riding lessons as well as taking care of the horses.
Oh my!
Some of the work while I was going to high school.
Quite a combination.
Yeah.
Your father was very fond of horseback riding, wasn't he?
He was
I read
really?
about him and riding all over Curtis Field when they were.
Oh yeah,
building.
he had, when he was building Curtis Field, he had a horse that he stabled with a farmer that lived on the outskirts of the field in the Rosedale side, and it was such a big area, and cars in those days had trouble traveling over the sand, so he used a horse. We had riding horses here right up through the World War II years. He was very interested in Tennessee walking horses. In fact, Tennessee, and raised and trained Tennessee walking horses down there. He rode actively up until about 85 years old. And then the allergy, more of an asthmatic type allergy, forced him to stop riding rather than just...
That's hard. Do you do any riding? Did this?
No, I haven't ridden in years and years. Say it was...
But you owned your own horses, riding
Yes.
horses when you were young. That
Yes,
must have been fun.
Yeah.
Did you ride? Were there fields around that you could ride in?
Oh yes, yes there were, and we would ride up, going up Henry Street all the way up into the area of the Jewish cemetery. There was a lot of room to ride up there.
Uh-huh.
It's all built up now. But,
Yes, I know. You've seen a lot of changes from
Yeah.
the time you were.
back in those days, East Avenue was just well, it was an oiled road. It had dirt shoulders, and you know, you could ride going up East Avenue and on up onto Henry Street and up and get into the more open areas up that way.
Uh-huh.
And
At one time, they had a golf course up beyond Southern State Parkway.
yes, it was on the east side of Franklin Avenue, the north side of the Southern State Parkway.
Mm.
There was a golf course there.
Was that there when you did your riding?
Yeah, but we didn't ride on the golf course.
That was taking too many chances, huh?
We
Did you
really-
play golf there?
No, I didn't play golf there. I started playing golf after I come out of the service in World War II.
Uh-huh. And it was gone by then.
Oh, yes.
All right, now,
It was shortly after, yeah, I think it was still, it hadn't been developed until shortly after the war was over.
I see.
But
Oh, Valley Stream had started to be developed before the war, just before the war, hadn't it? A few years, or 10 years before the war started.
Oh, the old Gibson development, which is the big part of Valley Stream, was back in the 20s.
Oh, it was that
Yeah.
long ago.
Yeah.
Mm.
Started right down off Roosevelt Avenue.
Well, that went on for quite a few years.
Oh yeah, and
Yeah.
covered it, and when all
Because
the
they
way
had
through
new
down,
sections
became the
all the
Gibson
time.
station was built down there to
Mhm.
accommodate, because it was really a whole commuter
Mm.
village. It was,
Now, Hendrickson Brothers never got involved in that kind of building, did you?
no, we worked for the Gibson Corporation, cutting the streets through and grading for them, digging cellars, etc. But the actual building of the homes we had no part of.
And how about Curtis Field? What was the Hendrickson Brothers' role there?
Well, that had been primarily a farm, the Risett farm, and we did all the grading for the airfield that was built there, the runways for grading and
Oh, I
drainage that
see.
was required.
Oh, you did. In other words, your work was before the airport to develop the airport.
To develop
itself.
the airport, yes.
Mm-hmm. How long was that airport there? Do you remember? It was there through World War II, naturally, wasn't
It was not active that late.
it? No.
Although during the war there was a small factory that built
Yes, I think
an
it's
amphibious type small
Columbia or
plane.
something
Columbia
like-
aircraft,
yeah.
I think of Columbia aircraft, yes.
Mm.
And they built a small amphibious type airplane there. I was not. I was in the Air Force myself. I wasn't.
So you couldn't keep tabs
as
on
you can
that.
see here.
Uh-huh. Oh, yes. Where were you stationed? Which
Well,
theater of war?
I was in the 8th Air Force station in England.
Uh-huh.
And that's
Did you
a picture of my crew there.
did you get involved in? Were you on a bomber?
Yes, I was a pilot of the B-17 bomber.
Mm-hmm.
We flew 30 missions over Germany.
That's a lot. Was that the limit that they would allow then? At that time, you went on so many missions and then...
Yes, originally when the 8th Air Force became operational, it was 25 missions. By the time I got there, I was a replacement crew. It was raised to 35. We flew our last 12 missions as a lead crew. And I guess maybe because they shot at the leader first, why they only had to fly 30 rather than 35.
Oh, I see. Well, you were probably in the most
Yeah,
dangerous
yeah.
position. Mm-hmm. And how long were you in the Air Force?
About 3 years.
Mm-hmm. Who was running the business at that time?
My father.
Oh, he was still
Yeah.
active. Uh-huh.
Yes, I became the president of the company in 1953.
I see.
But I had worked from the day after I graduated from high school.
You did.
I went to work for the company, and I've worked for it ever since.
But at the time of the war, you were away. Then how about the other?
Well, my father and two uncles were here.
Oh.
Both of my cousins were in the service.
Service too. That's
as
what I
well.
was thinking of.
Yes, yes. My cousin John was in the Navy, and then my cousin Frank Jr. was in the Army.
Uh-huh.
So we were away.
Yeah. Well, at least the other generation was still around to run things
Oh, sure.
at that time.
Yes,
Uh-huh.
they were here.
Did you go to college at all?
No, I did not.
No, well, they didn't have time.
Well,
it sounds like.
In 1933, the college expense was a lot less than it is today, but nevertheless.
No, it wasn't considered necessary to a career.
Well,
Only certain careers.
It was my father's greatest wish that I become a civil engineer, but
You were too busy working.
well, it was just a better thing to do than try to scratch up the money that wasn't here at the time to go to college.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Well, I imagine when in the 20s and 30s, especially, the money was always get plowed back into the business. That's usually the way it
But, I
works,
mean,
doesn't
it was it was right at the really heart of the Depression. Of
That's true.
33, and there wasn't that much work around.
Mhm.
So
Now, how about church? Was your family active in church at all?
yes, they've been active in the Methodist Church in Grace, as well as St. John's in Elmont.
I see.
Very active. As a matter of fact, both of those churches are stockholders of this company.
Oh, they were gifts of your...
They were gifts of my
Mhm.
father and uncles and myself.
That is lovely.
cousin.
That is very nice.
In fact, the Grace Church owns approximately 11% of this company.
That is marvelous. Well, they shouldn't have to worry for a long time.
Well.
And your mother, was she active there for any
Yes,
at the
she
time?
was.
Yeah. Do you remember any of the organizations or anything that she was involved with?
No, I don't.
How about, well, your father had such a list of organizations.
Yeah.
It would probably take the rest of the tape to
That's
talk
right.
about them all. What was he mostly interested in? As far as that's concerned, I mean, did he have any pet charities or anything like that?
And Boy Scouts.
In Boy Scouts?
Yes.
That's
He was
marvelous.
very active in the Nassau County Council of Boy Scouts. He led a fundraising drive that raised approximately $1 million, which was used to buy the property upstate for the Onteora camp.
Oh.
He was always quite active in the Boy Scouts.
Well, how about you boys? Were you in the
Well, I've
Scouts?
inherited his job
Oh, you
with
do?
the Boy Scouts.
Oh, I see. And still today that you're on?
Yes, I'm the vice president of the council, the Nassau County Council.
Uh-huh. And, but I mean, were you an active Boy Scout? Did you go
I
to
was a
camp
Boy
and all
Scout.
that kind of thing?
Yes, I was originally in Troop 109 at the Grace Church, and then when I went upstate, I was a member of the troop in Harriman, New York.
Mm-hmm. And how long did you stay active as a Boy Scout? Was it apt to be through high school in those days, or earlier that you would quit?
When I came back to Valley Stream, and my second year of high school, that was the end of my active scout, since I had left the upstate troop that I belonged to. I didn't reactivate myself in the local troop.
Yeah. I interviewed a woman whose name was Stick.
Yeah.
And,
Helen?
is it Lillian?
Lillian, yeah.
Lillian is the younger one. Yeah. The other one's name was I can't remember. Maybe it was Helen. Stuckey. Her name was. Her married name was. She still lived on Central Avenue. She said they had a farm.
Right up on
here.
the other side of
she
Central, just
mentioned-
about 2 blocks, 3 blocks up from here.
Yeah, she said the house was still there that they
Yeah.
used to live in. She mentioned
Might be
about
the one that's a chiropractic office. And, I know the house when I go by it.
uh-huh.
Yeah.
And she mentioned the great 4th of July parades they used to have. Do you remember anything about those?
Oh yeah, yeah. We even had rode
Real
our
old-
horses in them.
Oh, you
in the
rode your
parades.
horses in the parade. Now, where did they hold the parade? Down?
Well, it seemed to me they started up by School 13 and come down Rockaway all the way to the Gibson, the Gibson Station area. And I think they ended up by the School 24, on Valley Stream Boulevard, the one that's been torn down.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
The Franklin Avenue.
Franklin Avenue School.
Yeah. That was a pity they had to tear it down, but there's not much use, I guess, for old
No,
school
it
buildings,
seems
and
to
it
be.
was in bad shape by that time.
Well, the old Brooklyn Avenue School that's the oldest,
Yeah.
and that's still in
That seems-
operation. Yeah.
That seems to be,
Yeah.
well, I guess they took better care of it because they needed it. And what do you remember any other things like social affairs or events when you were growing up?
No, not particularly.
Well, now you met your wife in high school while you were she was in high school.
That's right.
What kind of things did you do when you were dating? Just trying
Actually,
to get a
we
fling.
never really got going until we both finished high school. I knew her from high school, but we didn't really start dating until after.
Uh-huh.
But we did the normal things, went to the movies.
Where did you go
went-
to the movies in those days?
Well, at Valley Stream, at the Fantasy in Rockville Center, Limbrook,
So Valley Stream movie always where it
Yes.
was until
Yes,
not too
that-
long ago?
that, my recollection is that was opened around in the late 1920s.
Uh-huh.
I think I'm sure I went to it the night that it opened.
Probably. It was a big
Yeah.
thing.
And to the beach in the summertime, on weekends we'd go to the beach, Long Beach, Point Lookout when they opened up the town beaches there.
Mm-hmm. Did you have a car at that time?
Yes, I had a car from my last year in high school.
Uh-huh. Yeah, they were very important.
Yeah.
Just as much as they are today, I guess. So that you drove to the movies and that kind of thing. It wasn't
Yeah.
a matter of getting transportation. Did your wife ever work?
No, she didn't.
She, but did you get into New York much? Do you remember that kind of thing?
Well, once in a while we would get into we went in there to a couple of
Show?
broadcasts,
Oh.
see some shows in Radio City. You know,
Was new.
yeah.
Yeah.
Remember the Rockettes?
And did you ever have a place on the island or upstate? Did you do that kind of thing in your early married life?
No, we didn't. We have friends that have a home out in Noyak, which is out on the east end of the island, near Sag Harbor, and we would visit them, and we still do.
Now, one of the things that we could go into a little bit was your earliest memories of your home. That was when it was a farm yet? Or was it?
Yes, they
Yeah.
were still farming
They
here,
were.
and the house was right where the new part of our office is.
Mm-hmm. And what did they do with the produce? Did they sell it locally, or?
No, it was taken to the market in New York.
Mm-hmm. Were you expected to help? Were the children
No,
expected to
I was.
Did you have laborers come in and work on the farm?
Yes, they were people who were employed on the farm seasonally.
Were they local people, as a rule, do you think?
Yeah, yes.
Mm-hmm. And they would take the stuff into market.
Well,
Somebody would.
my father was the market man. Quite a. They would leave here in the evening to arrive at the market by morning. Like going out on Sunday evening, be there for Monday morning, and then he would start back and meet my uncle, get some rest, and then start back. And my Uncle Frank would be taking the next load in. He'd meet him halfway,
Oh, I see.
and back to the market. I mean, he was.
Well, are we talking about horses at this time?
Yes,
or,
horses, yes.
These are the teams of horses that
Right.
they used to take in. How long do you think it took them to get to New York? Did it take them most of the night to get there?
Well, I guess it
Left
would.
in the
yeah,
evening.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
That sounds like a hard life.
Yeah, it was. I mean, he would leave here, like I say, on Sunday night and not get home until, I guess he would get back on Friday evening.
Mhm. And what did you specialize? They've specialized in any kind of
Well,
produce?
it was what would you call it? Truck farming. It was
Mhm.
carrots and beets and
The vegetables that maybe kept a little better,
Yeah.
rather than the leafy ones, I
yeah,
suppose.
that's
huh?
right. Always grow lettuce, salad,
Oh.
salad, lettuce. But the truck farm, it varied. They would get 3 and even as many as 4 crops off a farm in a year.
Uh-huh.
There was an early spinach that they used to call it monkey spinach. They practically
Monkey
threw
spinach.
it right in the. It didn't look. It grew more like on a stem, and you just picked the leaves off of it when you bought it.
Oh, I see.
And but they could put that right out in the mud when the frost was coming out of the ground. And
Uh-huh.
that was the first crop, and then
Uh-huh.
go on into the other. And, farm was, there's not a lot of acres, and in order to get the ultimate, most out of it, you just had to have the fast crops.
Have to
that
keep going.
keep
Yeah.
going.
Radishes and so on. Now, was your mother, at the time that your father was traveling into the city, all that, was she doing things that farmers' wives did? Was
Yeah,
she a
she had-
canner
I
and
had-
a
I had- yeah, I-
sewer and all
I
the
had
other
three. I
things?
had 3 sisters,
Oh, yeah. So
so she had a family to take care of us. But in those days, you did a lot of canning. They even would take vegetables like carrots and like that with the tops off, and bury them in what they call a root trench. So you can, later on in the winter, you could dig them up and have vegetables.
Yeah, root cellar I've heard of
Yeah.
too. Sometimes off the cellar they would have.
Oh
that.
yeah, you'd have potatoes in the cellar. And
But you and your sisters weren't they didn't expect you to work on the farm
No,
or anything
no,
like that.
no.
Well, you were lucky, I guess.
Well, by the time I really got big enough, we were no longer farming.
Yeah. What about, do you remember any of your early friends at that time of your life?
Oh, well, sure. I remember there was a Matthews family and a Dam family. That was their name, Dam.
Yeah,
They lived right across the street from Central Avenue here. And Arthur Matthews and Judge Dam were close friends.
What kind of trouble did you boys get into when you were that young? What'd you have to do around here? Well, you had the pond, the lake was always there, wasn't it? Did you
Well, at that time, the lake was part of the New York City water system,
Oh.
and you weren't allowed in it.
Oh,
Near
yes.
it, even. They didn't want you in it.
They had a caretaker who gave
Yeah.
boys a lot of trouble, I
That's
understand.
right. Yeah.
Uh-huh. So you weren't allowed to swim there
No,
or fish
no.
there or anything? huh?
No, the earliest swimming I did was in a place called Hershey's Dock, which is down the other side of the mall. You know, the airfield.
Uh-huh.
But
What was that, sort
yeah,
of
the
a creek
road
that
there.
came in there?
Yeah, it was a creek. It was a tide creek that come in there.
Uh-huh.
We would go down there and swim. And of course,
Very mosquito-y.
well,
You don't
guess
worry
so.
about those things, I guess,
No.
when you're young, huh?
Of course, then when I was upstate as a young boy, I did a lot of swimming in ponds up there. So
Uh-huh.
swimming was always one of my recreations.
And how about baseball? Did you get involved in that with your friends?
Oh yeah, sure. We always played baseball. And right across the
Sandlot?
street there was a vacant lot there, and we played there.
Was it sandlot kind of baseball?
Yeah,
Pick-up
sandlot,
games?
right,
Mhm,
yeah.
mhm. And you remember any of your good players there or anything?
Oh,
Do you have any kings of SWAT?
no. I think we were just a
Just the
sandlot team.
Just the average.
The average sandlot team.
Did at that time was the family able to get together for any kind of recreational things, or was it was just too much work involved? You know, I mean, did you go away together? Did you
No.
do any of those things together?
No, we didn't.
Not too many people did
No.
in that time. It wasn't expected. If you got 2 weeks vacation, you were very lucky.
Well, there's no such thing as a vacation, I guess, when you're farming and when you're first starting the contracting business.
I think I read somewhere that your father only had about 2 vacations up until the time he was in his 60s or something.
Right.
So you don't remember any trips of that, like
Well,
that? When you went up to Harriman, or up near Harriman, New York, you live in a small town, you said, up there.
Yes,
How
Harriman
small
was a
do you
small-
think, when we talk small?
Oh gosh, I don't suppose there was more than 300 or 400 people in
So it
Harriman
was
at
smaller
the
than
time,
Valley
yeah.
Stream, huh?
Yes, it was.
At that time, did you like it better, or were you anxious to get back?
Well, I liked it because the country, and I enjoyed it.
Uh-huh. And how about the school up there? How did that compare with your school here in Valley Stream?
I think it compared, it was equal school. They were all run under the state requirements.
I was thinking in terms of, activity or something like that.
Well, in grade school, in those days, there wasn't a lot of special activity. Soccer was a big game to play there, and
Oh. As
rather
early
than-
as that, huh?
Yeah.
That only became popular here not too
Yeah,
long
that's
ago,
right.
20
wasn't,
years ago or so.
It wasn't done down here at all, but it was there. That was the...
They must have had a good soccer coach or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
No, did you play at that time?
Yeah, I played, again,
A
it was
little
just
bit.
there was no league or anything like that, but we just had,
Mm-hmm.
we had the field in the back of the school and we played soccer.
Uh-huh. Now, can you remember any people or any person outside of your father, who I'm sure was a big influence on your life, but anybody else that you particularly remember that had an influence on the way you decided to live your life?
No, not particularly.
Now, were you active in your church when you were young?
Yes, I was.
They have a youth group down there?
Well, we had the Sunday school class, and we had a very...
And they usually were pretty large in those days, weren't they? Not
no,
so
the
much?
classes were kind of by age groups, and I think in my particular class in the last... nine in
I see.
the...
Was it boys and girls together?
No, just boys.
Just boys, I think, yeah, they had a habit of separating.
That's right,
of
they
those
did,
two.
yeah.
You got more serious, supposedly,
Yeah,
that way, right?
yeah.
Hmm. Do you remember your teacher there in
Uh,
any of those years?
I think
Say that again.
I have a recollection of Mr. Von Elm, who was a teacher.
Uh-huh. Now, you bet on Sunday mornings?
Yes,
Did you were you expected to go to church, too?
usually we went to church also.
Mm-hmm. Did you do anything as a class outside of the Sunday classes?
Well, the biggest thing I can remember was the teacher taking the class, I think there was 8 of us, into Times Square on New Year's Eve.
Oh, that was unusual for a Sunday school
And it was a
teacher.
very safe place, a very different place than it is today.
Yeah. Huh?
Yeah.
That they still had they had the ball come down though, didn't they, on the Times building there?
They had what?
Did they have the lighted ball, that goes down or up on
Gosh, I
what'd you
don't-
do there that night?
Well, there were thousands of people there,
Yeah.
and I guess you were watching everybody.
You were just hanging
doing
on,
something.
trying
It was-
trying not to get lost.
Yeah.
And
We took the train into the city, and I don't know, I suppose we spent a couple hours in there right up until New Year's Eve, as you know
Uh-huh.
how
how did
everybody goes
they
crazy.
announce New Year's Eve at that time?
Well, the fire whistles and horns and blowing.
Everything
and-
started to
yeah.
yeah. Do Valley Stream New Year's Eve, and not that one, but others. Did they do much of that celebrating kind of thing here?
Oh,
Did
Not
they
to any
did
great
they blow
extent, but-
whistles and all that kind of
yeah,
thing?
shoot off some guns.
Just make sure everybody noticed it, huh? So, do you remember anybody in the village? You said your father was mayor for a few years. Do you remember some of the men that he worked with at that time?
The late 20s in that area.
He was mayor around the 1920s, in the 20s
In the late
somewhere?
20s.
Late
Late
20s.
20s.
And you were upstate at that
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
Mhm. Do you remember any celebrities or anybody that you met? How about these nightclubs that they used to have?
Well,
here
they
in
had
Valley
the
Stream?
Pavilion Royal was a famous not really a nightclub, I don't know what you would call it, a roadhouse, a restaurant.
Roadhouse, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm.
Right on the corner of Central Avenue here and Merrick Road was Hoffman's, which was a nightclub. They did have entertainment there. At the Pavilion Royal, they built an addition to the back, and that was where Rudy Valley and was there with his orchestra, and
Mhm.
Alice Faye was the
Did you ever get
vocalist.
to go to any of those shows?
On the sidewalk outside listening to it at night.
That sounds like half the young people in Valley Stream were doing that.
We couldn't afford to go inside.
Well, um, Mrs. Stuckey mentioned that the musicians from there used to, during the war, well, you weren't here, used to work on their farm in the daytime so that they would get a preferred rating and they wouldn't be drafted.
Yeah. Both of them.
All right, now, are there, outside of your immediate family, your cousins, John and Frank, was it Frank?
Frank,
Freeman, Frank?
my uncle was Freeman. His son is John.
Oh, John. Uh-huh.
And he has two sons, John and Tom.
Right. Well, outside of that immediate family, are you related to any of the other Hendricksons in Valley Stream?
No, outside that immediate family, no. There was other Hendricksons. There was a Smith Hendrickson who lived down in South Central Avenue. They're not related. The Henry Hendrickson, the former sheriff in Nassau County from Valley Stream, was, what will I say, a cousin twice removed. That there was some family connection there, which I can't pinpoint.
Because your father was one of, what, 7 children, was
No,
it?
he was one of 3.
Oh, one of 3, right.
Yes.
I'm sorry. But before that, your grandfather was one of quite a number.
Yeah, and it was he had half brothers, the Smiths. Uncle Charlie Smith was a half brother of my grandfather's.
So they had a really big family here
Yes,
at that
and then
time,
there
but
was,
most of them must have left the Hendrickson part
Yeah,
anyway,
yeah.
huh?
we have, they're all gone now. We have a grandson, great-grandson of Sidney Hendrickson, who was with the Race on Asphalt Company. And, some part of the Smith family, whether they be Bedells or others, are still working for the company. They're, their grandsons.
All right, and Mr. Hendrickson, you're still active in the business, I
Yes, ma'am.
understand, even though your nephews are also working with you. And do you put in a full day here?
Normally.
And what, you're president? Is that your
Yes,
title?
I'm president of the company.
Who else in the family is an officer?
My cousin John is the secretary of the company.
Now he's retired more or less, hasn't he?
No, he's still.
Oh, I thought
still working.
I had the
Yes.
wrong idea.
No, he's still working. He's an engineer, and he's in our engineering department. His son, as I mentioned earlier, his son John Freeman is with the company in the purchasing department, insurance. His other son, as I mentioned, is president of the Race on Asphalt Company, which is a
subsidiary.
It's not really a subsidiary, but it's an allied company. But it's not actually an actual subsidiary of Hendrickson Brothers.
Does that work out of here? This is their
No,
base?
the Race on Asphalt has 3 plant locations in Cedarhurst and Farmingdale and Glencoe.
I see.
And they produce asphalt concrete there, which is for sale to Hendrickson Brothers and other contractors
I see.
as well.
Do you have
I have a nephew, Arthur Ledley, who is my sister's son, who is a carpenter boss for us.
Perhaps you want to give me your sister's names. I don't think we really got into
Yeah,
that.
my sister, Ella is older than I, and she lives in Southold and has a home in Florida.
What is her married name?
Her married name is Brawl. She's a widow. My next sister is Eudora. Her married name is Rushka, and she lives in College Park, Maryland. And my younger sister, Margaret Allen, lives in North Carolina.
Oh, well, they're certainly spread around,
Yes,
huh?
yes.
Must be kind of hard to have a family reunion these
Yeah, it
days.
is. It's a telephone thing more than anything else.
Well, it's been very nice talking to you. I enjoyed it very much, and I'm sure that people will be interested in what you have to say.
Okay, thank